This is the June 11th, 2024 meeting of the Jefferson City Board of Adjustment. My name is Drew Hake. I'm chair of the board. I'd like to introduce the members present. Jim Crabtree.
Present.
Jay Seaver.
Yeah.
Katie Lacey. Roy Michael.
Here.
I'd like to also introduce our council liaison. I had the privilege of meeting her this morning since I was absent last week. Ms. Trika
Young.
Trika Young, thank you so much. Good to have you here. Staff members, would you introduce yourselves, please?
Courtney Bliss, City Planner.
Eric Barron, Planning Manager.
Clint Smith, Director of Planning and Technical Services.
Sean McCall, Associate City Attorney.
Tiffany Pearson.
Thank you. Missouri law requires at least 4 affirmative votes to be cast for the approval of any official matter before this board. Alternates may be designated to vote upon the absence or disqualification of any of the board members. A quorum of 4 members or alternate is necessary to conduct the business. I declare that there is, in fact, a quorum present. Absence of a regular member, Mr. Schaefer. Are there any members who choose or need to disqualify themselves on any of these agenda items?
No, sir.
Seeing none. Okay, voting members shall be as follows: Jim Crabtree, Drew Hake, Katie Lacey, Jay Seaver, and Roy Michael as alternate, correct? Okay. Is there applicants or representative present for the cases? Case number B24002, 1804 West McCarty Street, front setback variance. Case number B24003, Callaway County Road 4036, conditional use permit, setback variance. If so, raise your hands. Y'all here?
Yeah, we have applicants for both.
Okay. Is there any request for a continuance of any matter before this board?
No.
Seeing none. Is there any request to reorder the agenda this morning?
No.
Seeing none. Okay, all testimony and evidence shall be submitted to the board under oath. This time, all those who wish to speak shall please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, Ms. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to briefly describe the procedures of the board. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so please project your voice when speaking and give your name and address for the record. The standard order of each case is as follows. After introduction of the request by city staff, the applicant or consultant will provide information on the request. We make a presentation by the applicant to 1 to 10 minutes. Or additional time to read by the board. The applicant should have an additional 3 minutes for closing testimony if requested. We will then ask to hear from support for the request. We will then ask to hear from opponents of the request. We will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. Testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each unless additional time is granted by the board. The board will then discuss, city staff will then give their report on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, versus printed materials including applicable findings and staff report shall not be read into the record unless directed by the board. The board will then close the testimony from the floor. The board will discuss the proposals and publicly make its determination of agreement. The formal motion shall be positive, that is, if the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. A final vote will be taken with ayes in favor, nays opposed. If 4 or more votes are cast in favor of the motion is approved. If 3 or less votes are cast in favor of the motion is denied. The following documents are entered as exhibits for all action or consideration at this meeting. The City Code of City of Jefferson as amended, the comprehensive plan and land use map, class of applications under consideration, a list of property owners to whom notices were sent, the affidavit publication of the notice to the newspaper, class of drawings, plans, and renderings under consideration, letters and memorandum of staff reports, minutes of proceedings, correspondence, or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant. The rules of procedure for the Jefferson City Board of Adjustment. We observe public record and available for inspection through the Department of Plan and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are presented, distributed, or otherwise received pertaining to the cases under consideration become the property of the board. This includes any photographs, drawings, petitions, and letters. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Okay, so could I have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thanks. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the May 14, 2024 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Have we had any correspondence this morning on either case?
No.
None? Thank you. Okay, first case this morning, B24002, 1804 West McCarty Street. Front setback variance request filed by Mr. Richard Elgin. Property owner for the following number one is a 12-foot variance from the required 25-foot front setback to permit a construction of a new garage and carport at a 13-foot front setback. Item two, a 1-foot variance from the required 10-foot side setback for an accessory structure to permit a new garage at a 9-foot side setback, okay, on the foundation of an existing garage. Item three, a 7-foot variance from the requirement that the accessory structure be separated from the primary structure at least 10 feet to permit a separation of 3 feet. The property is zoned RS3 medium density residential and is located on the north side of West McCarty Street, 130 feet south of the intersection of Ella Street, and is described as part of lots number 13 and 14 in Block 1, Strongthorpe subdivision, in the city of Jefferson, Cole County, Missouri. Ms. Courtney.
The subject property, 1804 West McCarty Street, is outlined in blue on the screen and is zoned RS3 single-family residential and contains a single-family home with an existing garage. Surrounding zoning and land uses are all single-family residential. It's a close-up aerial image of the site with, again, the subject property being outlined in blue, and you can see there the existing home and garage. And you also note that this is a triangular or pie-shaped lot, and it is less than a quarter of an acre. It's part of the Strongthorpe subdivision and has a curved front. What the applicant is wishing to do today is they wish to, in order to construct a new garage, so demolish the existing garage and then place a new garage on the existing foundation, garage foundation, plus add a open air carport. They wish to have two variances, one for the front setback. So these accessory structures would encroach into, the way they're proposing it, they would encroach into the front setback by 12 feet. So they're wanting a 12-foot variance for the front setback. They're also wishing to have a 1-foot variance for the side setback, or the side, a 1-foot side setback variance to permit a 9-foot side setback for the west side. And they're also wanting, so in the city code, there is a standard where accessory structures have to be separated from their primary structure by 10 feet. And so they wish to have that closer, the accessory structure is closer than that. So they're wanting a 7-foot variance from that requirement so that they can place those accessory structures 3 feet from the primary structure. Here's a street view looking from West McCarty Street to, with on this image you can see 1804 West McCarty Street, the subject property located on the right hand side of the image, and then also its neighbor 1212 West McCarty Street. So these two properties share that same side of the property line where the applicant is wishing to place the garage and carport and where they're asking for that side setback variance. So this is a site plan that has been, a drawing that's been submitted by the applicant to demonstrate what they're wishing to do, which is again demolish the existing garage and then place a new garage on the existing garage foundation with an open air carport. And again, those would, the way they're proposing it would, they're requesting requesting two variances, one a front setback variance and a side setback, and then also that separation requirement. And this is a elevation that's been submitted by the applicant to demonstrate that this would be with the garage and carport would be this connected all together. And so the Board of Adjustment is the entity that reviews both setback variances and separation variances. And as a part of that, there are general variance findings that the board looks at, and the applicant has provided responses on those, and staff has also noted on those general findings as well. And those include just looking into things such as the impact of looking into impacts such as the light and air, and then the impacts on traffic and the surrounding the value and enjoyment of surrounding properties. And then also there's a specific finding for setback variances, which looks into are there qualities found on the site which would create a hardship, an unnecessary hardship for the property owners to do something that ordinarily may need to do. So those are the initial details of this request. Again, two setback variances, one for the front, one for the side, and then a separation variance for the accessory structures from the primary structure.
Any questions for staff?
Couple questions. So currently the existing garage is not within the 10-foot setback from home, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the setbacks for an accessory structure, many garages and other accessory structures are located in the rear yard. And so once you get 60 feet back from the front property line, the setback for an accessory structure reduces to 5 feet. But if it's in front of that, then it's whatever setback the standard for that district in this case, and most other cases, is 10 feet. So that's the applicable setback. Yes, being located 9 feet from the property line, it's what we would consider a grandfather.
Right.
Ryan, what is the, I'm sorry, Eric, what is the intent of the separation?
So the separation, I believe, and it may not be as relevant as maybe it was when originally inserted into the zoning code back in 2002, that 10-foot separation for accessory structures from the primary structure, I think was concerns from the fire department in terms of providing a separation there. Probably for two reasons. One, to prevent fire from going from one structure to the other, and then two, to make sure you have enough space. Although 10 feet should be plenty. There's other things where setbacks can be less than that. But and I'm not sure what building code was in place back in 2002. I can't recall if we were still operating under BOCA. But there's fire code items in the fire code and the building code that often touch on that separation, making sure fire is not spreading. Plus, of course, a garage can be located, in the same line as a primary structure. But it is a thing in the zoning code, and so certainly we're bringing variances if you feel necessary to add that to the list. So.
And Eric, what would be the purpose or for the buffer from the street?
Oh, the front setback?
So where the 12-foot variance comes into play.
And so, yeah, that's to get into the standard 25-foot setback. Of course, all just kind of at a glance, it kind of appears that the houses there are all meeting that 25-foot setback. So this would permit a structure to go into that area to exist a little closer to the road than everything else is permitted to. And so, of course, that has a visual effect on the street.
Is that mainly what that 25-foot setback is for? Is a visual?
Well, I think it can be for multiple reasons. I think that's one that's fairly easy to understand. Not crowding the street. Imagine a garage that was right at the street line. That might be a bit of a safety issue. So there's likely other reasons. But.
So did I interpret correctly that when the carport is constructed, that there's 11 feet from the front of the carport to the street?
13, I believe, and then an additional 15 for a total of 28 feet from the edge of the carport to the actual curb. So of course, the setbacks are measured to the property.
To the property.
Any other questions for staff? You answered one of my questions there. I had a city-owned right-of-way question there for a minute, but I believe you just answered it. Thank you. Okay. Who would like to present this case before this board? Please come to the podium, name and address for the record.
Good morning, my name is Richard Elgin. My address is 1804 West McCarty Street, Jefferson City, Missouri, 65109. I just wanted to touch bases on some of the setbacks that were presented to the board. I want to apologize right now. I'm visually impaired and I can't address you by name. I can't read. So, the existing garage is 3 feet from the corner. The closest corner is 3 feet to my house. It was grandfathered in. Apparently, I was told that if you tear down a garage, your grandfather is out the window. And that's why I'm applying for a new variance to build it in the same spot that it is now. I am going to build it a little bit taller, pitch of the roof, in order so I can have some storage in the attic area. The carport will extend out from, you can see the garage there, 18 feet as one structure. It will be built, it's not going to be an ugly structure. I just put in a $20,000 retaining wall right there, you can see, so I'm not going to skimp on a garage and a carport. We wanted to have it open air so that it wouldn't be, I just think that it would look better in that it wouldn't obstruct any view from any of the traffic along the street. The 9 foot is, if you can look on the left side of my garage, there's a brick wall, and that will remain as part of the foundation. And I measured from there over to the neighbor's fence, which was 9 foot. Now that's not a survey measurement, that's just me with a tape measure. And then the 3 foot is on the other side. Like I said, it's going to be on the same footing and foundation. It's just going to extend out. I really need a desire. I guess I don't need, but I do, would like a 2-car garage, but as you can see from the pie-shaped property, that's impossible to do it on the sides. To go in the backyard is virtually impossible. There's trees and stuff in the way, so coming out with a carport instead of another garage was more pleasing to me and to us, and to use the carport, for the protection of the vehicles. That's the entire intent of that, is to be able to get a couple of vehicles under cover. So really, that's pretty much that in a nutshell.
Okay. How long have you lived at that residence?
about 10, 11 years now. We really liked the neighborhood, and before I even started all of this, I presented the drawings and stuff to just the adjacent neighbors and across the street, to 5 of the neighbors, and there were no objections. So
Yeah, the board thanks you for that effort, because often that becomes an issue down the road once we get a little further.
Yeah.
There's no objections.
Well, I didn't get any from there. I know that the city had sent out letters to extend out 185 feet from my property line, which puts it over into a couple other neighborhoods even. So there's probably 18 or 20 letters sent out. So, but I've had some people stop by and ask me about it.
Of course you have.
Well, that big sign in the front yard kind of sticks out.
Yeah, that kind of tells a story, doesn't it? Yeah.
So can I just clarify? You're going to tear down your existing garage,
Yes.
and then you're going to rebuild a garage on that same structure, on the same footings?
Yes.
Okay. And you're not expanding that part of the project. The expansion is the carport in
Right.
front.
The expansion only will go towards the street. From the sides, I'm as close now as the new garage will be. It's just that I lost my grandfather's status once you tear it down.
The neighbor's question was mine because, like Drew said, I think that's really important. And it sounds like you got that taken care of. I'm kind of curious with the way this is, I don't understand with your retaining wall. It appears that you're going to be driving up your driveway and then turn into the new carport.
No, it's going to be
understand. Straight in?
Straight in.
Okay.
It's going to be
So-
the same width as the garage, but extend out 18 feet. And then I'll be
And the new garage is going to also be used for vehicles or storage or whatever. Because,
whatever. It's
so
a
it
garage.
sounds like to me you're going to basically have a single file deal.
Yeah. It's
And
a
you'll
single
have
file.
to, whoever has to leave first in the morning needs to park on the outside.
Or trade
those are
keys.
questions. And another question I had also was, or statement, I guess, more than anything, you're limited by that giant oak tree too. I mean, you can't, I drove by there Saturday and that's a big tree.
Yeah, and there's a twin right at the
You can't
rear
do
of the
anything.
property.
It's a real unusual configuration, but it seems like we've been down this road many times.
Yes, we have.
It seems like it's always these weird configurations.
Well, it's something that I did not even consider when I bought the property. I know it's a single car garage, and okay, you got to kind of deal with that. But as life goes on, and the needs change, but I was limited, and so.
I've lived here my whole life, and I had never taken the extension of West McCarty in that little one lane. I always thought that was a driveway.
I thought it was an alley, but anyway.
An alley, a driveway, and I drove down there, and I've never, ever driven on West McCarty, but that is a nice little neighborhood right in there.
Right.
And you've done a nice job with the way you've, your retaining wall and stuff like that. Looks good from the street.
Yeah, well, thank you.
One thing that I always look at is when an addition infringes on the front setback is the impact it has. If I drew a line from the face of the neighbor to the west and just extended that across your addition, the carport is only about 4 feet beyond that front face. And I'm guessing, just playing with aerials, and typically we don't like that, but this is an open structure, so you won't read it as defining as a solid structure.
Well, I had gone out and put stakes out in the side of the driveway so that my neighbors could see exactly where the end of the new carport would be. And I actually went out in the street and I walked down the street as if I were driving. I saw the stake I can see some. And to make sure people could see around the curve and there is no obstructions whatsoever. And then it dips, the hill goes down and then you lose vision from the hill faster than.
And the other question that I was wrestling with is, once the carport is built and you have your car parked in there, and you have a friend come over, there's still room to park in the driveway.
Right. And there is also, you can park off to the side closer to the retaining wall. It's actually a 2-car driveway with one entrance. I didn't expand that entrance yet. I may do that at some point. But
The funnel effect.
right. And yes, there would still be room for a full-size car to park in my driveway behind a car that's underneath my carport.
And then street parking is allowed,
Yes.
and it appears that there's low volume of traffic through here.
Yeah, very low. Like if you've never been down
I'm telling you, it was like the new part. I thought I was out of town.
Well, when I first heard it, and I didn't particularly want to be on, West McCarty, but I was thinking further around the corner and up, around the 1500 block. But when we did get over there, that kind of changed my mind because it does look like a different part of.
And your neighbors have been receptive to the idea,
Oh, yeah.
especially your neighbor to the west?
West.
Is it-
Well, yes, he signed my, I had a form for them to fill out that they are in agreement
Okay.
or they disagree, and then I gave them some space to tell me why. And none of them wrote anything. Now, my neighbor was concerned about when construction was going to start, when it was going to end, how late. I said, well, there's codes for all of that. And he was concerned that the post that I'm going to be using to hold up the end of the carport, that someone would run into it. And I'm like, well, I'll worry about that myself. So he did have concerns, but they were more of, I don't know.
Operational.
Do any other members have questions for the applicant?
No, I appreciate you bringing a project that is an improvement to the house in a good way, and the appearance of the structure, I think, I appreciate how you put effort into the appearance of it so that it's not just some metal cardboard drawing.
Right.
It'll add to the house.
Right. I just didn't want those portable carports stuck out there because they're just ugly to me. But I mean, if I had a farm somewhere, and yeah, okay, but this is my home, and I put a lot of money into this little house, and I plan on staying there a while.
The board certainly appreciates the thoroughness of your presentation with the documents you submitted. Very thorough. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition of this request? Is there anyone present who wants to speak for this request for any reason? Seeing none, turn it over to you, Ms. Courtney.
So we reviewed this request and looking at the lot shape and size, if I was confirmed for inside the unit shape, in addition to the position of the home and the existing garage, the variances and separation various requests is an option to accommodate for applicants desire to construct a new garage by using foundation to open air carport. The building code does have standards for garages which are built near homes, and all of our city code requirements must be met. There are three requests for board consideration today. And from the screen, there are three motions. One, 10-foot separation requirement to eliminate a 3-foot separation between those accessory structures and the primary structure that home. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Chair, you can combine all three of those into a single motion.
You're getting real good at reading my mind.
Unless there's a reason to separate out any individual element.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Seeing, hearing none, someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. In reference to case B24002, I would make a motion to approve the following. Number one, a 12-foot variance from the required 25-foot front setback to permit construction of a new garage and carport at a 13-foot front setback. Number two, a 1-foot variance from the required 10 feet side setback accessory structure to permit a new garage at a 9-foot side setback on the foundation of an existing garage. And number three, a 7-foot variance from the requirement that accessory structures be separated from the primary structure at least 10 feet at a separation of 3 feet.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Either.
Which one of you guys got that one?
Roy.
Right, okay. Thank you. Discussion. Once again, we're in a position dealing with awkwardly shaped lots here in this town. Again, the board greatly appreciates the input that you provided to help us sort this thing out. Definitely an improvement to the neighborhood. Seeing no objections from the neighbors, sounds like it's a well thought out process. Do other members have any comments, discussion? Okay, Ms. Tiffany, roll call, please.
Crabtree,
Yes.
Seaver,
Yes.
Hake,
Aye.
Lacy,
Aye.
Michael.
Yes.
5-0.
5-0, motion carries. We're done and you won. If you have any questions, see these people over here. Thank you very much. You're excused if you wish. All right, case number B24003, Galloway County Road 4036, conditional use permit and setback variance. Request filed by Thomas and Karen Sheppers, property owners, on behalf of Selective Solutions LLC applicant for the following. Item 1, a conditional use permit for a 145-foot tall monopole style cellular telecommunications tower. Number 2, 7-foot variance from the required setback of 95 feet to permit a property line setback for a tower of 88 feet. This property is located at the southern terminus of Callaway County Road 4036, approximately 1,400 feet south of Riviera Heights Drive, and is described as part of the northwest corner of Section 10, Township 44 North, Range 11 West, in the city of Jefferson, as well as the county of Callaway. Okay, Ms. Courtney.
So I'll give the presentation on this case.
Okay.
First, I'd like to describe to the board what the regulations are, what the zoning code says about cell towers and telecommunication facilities. First, we use that term telecommunication facility when talking about cell towers. There are other types of telecommunication facilities. There are types of arrays that can be mounted on top of buildings. There's some that can be mounted on utility poles, the small cell services. But I think the most easily recognizable, especially by the traveling public, is the cell tower. So that is what's proposed this morning. The zoning code permits cell towers up to a height of 70 feet in all zoning districts. And so if a company or someone's wanting to construct a cellular tower of 70 feet or less, it is identified as a permitted use within the zoning code. cell towers greater than 70 feet in height fall into a category of being a conditional use in all zoning districts. And so thus require a conditional use permit, which of course is heard by the Board of Adjustment. So that is why this is before you this morning. Also, the zoning code has a fairly significant number of standards that are associated with a tower. And the staff report tries to touch on each one of those standards. It goes on for about a page. Everything from setbacks from property lines, separation distances, and one moment. The type of tower, monopole versus a guy wire type structure. Some more operational type standards regarding like outdoor storage. You have a lot of stuff associated with them. Some measure to make sure that there's some screening so that these facilities, depending on where they're located, can be a bit of an eyesore. They're a very utility kind of oriented use. And when I say that, the compound area at the base of the tower. But anyway, the staff report touches on a lot of those design and construction standards. And so there's one particular standard with respect to a setback. And so the setbacks for towers are based on the height of the tower. And it's basically the requirement is for this particular tower, 145 feet tall, would be a 95 feet setback from all property lines around the property. And so up on the screen is the location of the property. So highlighted in blue, it's very large. It's a farm field. It is located right on the edge of the city limits. If you see that kind of faint orange line, that is the city limit line. The property is zoned in RU, which is a rural, or you might call it an agricultural type of zoning. As you can see, just on the outside of the city limits, there's no coloring for the zoning. There is no zoning in unincorporated Callaway County. So there's a dot approximately where the cell tower would be located. So kind of in the northern side of that tract of ground. And so this is located on Highway 54, basically adjacent to Highway 54. At the very bottom of the screen is the Hitachi, formerly ABB, manufacturing plant. Just off to the bottom left of the screen is the interchange of Highways 63 and 54. So if you're going to Columbia, you would take that interchange. And then just to the top of this, in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, is the Summit Drive ramps or interchange. The wineries is just off the screen to the north. And so access to the property is from a county road, a Callaway County road, from that interchange, going down this gravel road. And there's actually a small little parking area, somewhat informal, off of the end of this county road. And there's a trail. I call it a Greenway Trail connection from there going down to the Katy Trail, which is located right here. And so this is the State Park Katy Trail trailhead located inside Jefferson City. So again, the proposed tower location is located right here. This is just a slightly closer view of some of it. I'll point at that again, located approximately right there. some of the surrounding property is referenced on the zoning. It's zoned rural in both directions, both kind of to the east and the west. To the south is, of course, that M1 light industrial, or sometimes called indoor industrial zoning district. Again, Hitachi is located south. And then, of course, on the other side of the city limit line, there is no zoning regulations. So, the nearest house, basically nearest private property, is located right here. The house is located outside the city limits of the city of Jefferson. But the property owners, in addition to owning that property, also own a small tract of ground located inside the city limits. I'll point out that the property lines in this area, I'll use the very untechnical term of wonky. They're a little, I don't think they're mapped entirely correctly. There is a surveyed document within the application materials, and so the applicant did have a survey prepared for the area, which I think would be a more official kind of representation of property lines in the area. But yeah, it is mapped a little odd in this area. And so this is a site plan that was submitted with the application materials. Yeah, it is a little difficult to read at this scale. I'll zoom in on it first, but I wanted to point out that basically this right there is a representation of that small parking area. Again, where people park and unload their bicycles and ride that short trail down to the Katy Trail. And then, so what they're proposing, and it's currently serves, there's a kind of a farm field access, driveway off of that right now. And so they're proposing access from that location down a gravel driveway to get to a compound site, construct a compound site with a tower. This is a little bit closer view of that compound. Be surrounded by chain link fence, okay, all around. I guess this line right here. Driveway access into it. So the initial equipment area is located right here, with the tower located in the middle. And then they've identified a couple of different locations for other providers. Should that occur, another provider proposed to locate on the tower, they're showing that there's room for additional equipment locations within this compound. This is a rendering of the tower, kind of a standard monopole tower with antenna array on the top. 145 feet tall, plus a 4-foot lightning rod. There is a space they've identified, and this was some of this labeling right here is, space for additional users. The property is located within the regulated floodplain, Missouri River floodplain. That basically just means that they would have to meet floodplain regulations. And so they're actually proposing would accommodate that through an elevated equipment pad. And so that's what this rendering shows, so that it would be elevated, and then the equipment would be located on top of this. Apologize as I flip through some of these slides. So the setback variance, and again, the tower location being located approximately right there. And so the setback variance, a 95-foot required setback, and the center of their tower is looking, I think, at an 88 feet setback, but it's measured from the highway right-of-way. So that this property line that is adjacent to Highway 54. And I'll point out that Highway 54 is a very wide right-of-way. So not only is there the highway and the stuff on the side of it, extends out far enough to accommodate, a gravel side road, and then, also the trail, is located on that area. And so, but I think that's important to point out that setback variance is not measured from private property. So the nearest private property I've identified as 152 feet. And so, they meet that setback requirement from private property. And again, that would be from this property line, kind of in this area, adjacent to that property. The distance from the center of the tower, or from the tower to the nearest single-family home, okay, right there, is approximately 350 feet. Might be a little bit more.
What's the address of that home? Is it in the notification list?
I don't know the specific address. They are here today.
Eric, in discussion of adjacent properties, I was looking at your notification list, and I did not see MoDOT listed.
Normally, we wouldn't be mailing to an owner of right of way, and so if they had real property, then they would be included on a notification list.
And the distance to the MoDOT right of way is approximately
88 feet.
88 feet. Okay. And then I see FAA did not have any objections.
Correct, thank you. They did, and it is basically necessary before an application is submitted to make sure that that FAA would approve a tower location, and so they do have that documentation. It is in the file.
Toward the back.
Yep. And so they did come to a determination of no hazard to air navigation. They also came to a determination that no lighting or specific markings would be necessary for this location.
They're referring to that kind of leads into what I was thinking. On page 1 at the very bottom, first of all, this tower is 145 feet, and I believe it said there was a 4 feet high lightning thing. Yeah. So we're at 149. And this last sentence was semi-alarming to me. It says any height exceeding 150 feet above ground level, which this is not, it's 1 foot below, will result in a substantial adverse effect and would warrant a determination of hazard to air navigation. That's 1 foot. It seems like we're just trying to get directly under the bureaucratic, 150 limit. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm being a devil's advocate, but also in addition to that, that's very far away from any, on the positive side, planes are not going to come in that direction. And they'd have to go right literally through Riviera Heights. They'd have to, and there's high trees in there. So I don't think it's an issue. I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, how we're 1 foot under the FAA.
And I guess the question I would ask staff is, you're just under 90 foot from the MoDOT right-of-way. If the tower were to fail, it would be on Highway 54. And it would seem to me that it would be a courtesy to have MoDOT review and approve.
So that's a city requirement, not a MoDOT requirement. And so if located outside the city, I'm not aware of any setbacks or anything that's required by MoDOT.
I'm just looking at hazard control, damage control.
Sure. One has to remember the distance of the right away from the actual paved areas too.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm looking at. You know, I went on Google Earth and it could be a problem.
Yeah, they're not required to be notified, and if you know, if located outside the city, then there would be setback applicable at all. So just to try
But it is in the city.
Huh?
It is in the city.
But it is located within the city. So, and so yes, the Jefferson City Airport is located. It's off the screen to the south. I measured approximately 4,100 feet from the runway portion of the airport. And so, yes, the 150 feet number I think is relevant, both in two regards. I think it is a very relevant type of elevation with respect to FAA determinations. But it's also referenced within the zoning code that towers above 150 feet are not permitted. And basically would require an even more intensive review by this body if someone's proposing something taller than that. And so,
Seer, did you have something for Eric?
I may hold this for the, is there someone representing?
yes.
I think I'll hold that.
Put yours into that portion then.
And so cellular towers are, there are a lot of state and federal laws regarding cellular towers, and so there are certain things that local jurisdictions cannot take into consideration when locating some of these. And so if we get into that territory, of course reference that. Outside of that, I think I've tried to touch on everything I wanted to in the initial presentation. Again, the applicant is here. Has a couple slides we can go through as well. So,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Who would like to present this case before this board? Come to the podium, name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. I'm not used to saying that at a Board of Zoning Adjustment. This is the earliest I've ever done one of these in 25 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Good morning. My name is Russell Bean. I am with Selective Solutions, and thank you for getting that right when you said it.
Spelling last name, please.
B-E-E-N.
Thank you.
I am at 340 Marshall Road, Valley Park, Missouri, 63088.
Thank you.
I will tell you this application looks very different from the first time that we've submitted it to the city. My client is Vertical Bridge, and Vertical Bridge is a vertical real estate company is what we like to call them. They own towers and then lease it to the cell phone carriers and whoever else might need space on their towers. The advantage there is that anyone who wants to come use their tower, most of them they have agreements with and they could get on very easily. We actually, when we first came looking, we actually had a request for a taller tower, and we were actually further in to move ahead here real quick. How did you do that cool light thing?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, top button. Yeah.
We were actually down in this area when we first came to the city, and the reason why is one of the prime reasons that this tower is here is for additional wireless support to the Hitachi plant, a client of our client. Then we also wanted to take advantage of additional coverage on that highway corridor. As you guys know, coming in and out in the morning and in the evening, it could get quite busy. And then also additional coverage for the Katy Trail. My family is full of cyclists. I'm not one of them, as you can tell. But there has been times where there's been incidents on the Katy Trail that they've had trouble getting help just due to the lack of coverage. And that's not here only, but throughout the whole trail. And that's a personal vendetta of mine, is to help get better coverage on the Katy Trail. The tower we're proposing is a 149-foot monopole with the 4-foot lightning rod. And you're absolutely correct. We are exactly 1 foot beneath where we have to be. In FAA throughout the country, if you exceed 200 feet, you automatically have to light. And out of the 400 towers I've built in the last 3 years, 385 of them have been 199 feet. That is just to get as tall as you can without having to do all the extra. And then to address your question about MoDOT, MoDOT has a whole lot of we don't care when it comes to these things. We are actually throughout the St. Louis area and the corridor down 44 and 70, buying pieces of ground from MoDOT, what they call their surplus property, and we came to them and said, hey, we need to get some coverage, and they're like, please buy a piece of property. And those are sitting right off the highway, and they've not expressed concern. I think one of the main reasons is the way these things are engineered now, and as long as you build to even the minimum standards of the city, the last thing that's going to go down in any kind of weather that would come through here is going to be one of these towers. And I actually brought pictures over all the tornadoes throughout May. The news stories love to take pictures, and I have pictures here of semi-trucks flipped over and twisted, almost leaning up against a tower that the tornado went right through. That's just the way these things are built now. I've been doing this since 1999. And
the wind load is designed?
It's 90 mile per hour with 3-inch radial ice. That's the 2023, or no, that was 2020 IBC. Do you know what you guys are using now? 2018. So we design to the latest, and then retro write it to meet the current code. But for liability reasons alone, they build these things to hold every bit of the equipment and still meet that wind loading. And they're even, when they design this tower, they'll design for future loading as well, to make sure that if it should come through there, weather would go through there, that this would be still standing and still providing communications.
And you noted that you moved the location from the southern portion of the site to the northern?
Correct.
What was the logic?
One was we knew that we were going to have to lower the height of the tower, and to get around the bluff, we moved it so that the lower tower would get out of the bluff. And also, the longer we discussed with Mr. Sheppers, the landlord, the more he liked us out of the middle of his field. But the primary reason was knowing we would have to lower the height. And we also knew the closer we moved up toward the bluff, the higher we would be able to go with our tower. One of the requests from the city was that even though the FAA did not require us to light the tower, that we would add lighting to the tower. And what we are proposing, and we actually went to our FAA consultants and said, hey, if we were to have to light the tower, what would the FAA recommend? And what we are proposing here is a basically always on medium intensity red lighting. And that would be just like the ones that you see on all the other towers, but ours would be always on, they wouldn't flash. And that again is to help with the surrounding property, so they're not dealing with the flashing light when it didn't need to be. One of the other things that I thought was interesting, I took and I drew a line, this is with Google Earth. Before Google Earth, I actually had to go to the county and pull out property records and then get GIS maps. And I used to know how to use a slide rule, but I would have since forgot it by now. But the change in elevation from where the tower is to the top of the bluff, if I can come down here, is 145 feet. And I apologize, I left my house at 3:30 this morning and my eyes are very dry. So 135 feet, and then if you include the trees that are between where the properties are and the bluff, this is going to be pretty well hidden from the properties up on top of the bluff. And then again, why when we originally proposed the tower, it was taller. And when we kind of split the difference and put it where we're proposing it, when we lowered it, we didn't really think about it, and it still left us with that extra setback. And after talking to staff, they actually, I'm not gonna say requested that we keep it there, but thought it might be a good idea if we kept it there just that little bit further away from the private property owners to the northeast. So if it came down to it and you thought it would be better if we didn't have the variance, we would be willing to move it in that 7 feet, and it still would be within the tolerance of our 2C survey, which is how you get the FAA approval, is with the 2C, and you have a 15-foot circle that you can move within. But at the advice of staff, we're going to still request that just to keep it that much further away from the private property owners. This is a half a mile from our tower, and what I wanted to show you was the T-Mobile is on this tower already. And then this tower is a little short guy, which wouldn't allow us to have coverage at the Hitachi plant, which is the primary goal of our tower here. And also, as you can see, it's rural farmland along that whole area down by the airport. And then this is, again, our determination of no hazard. And then, again, not requiring lights, but at the request of city, we would gladly provide it. And at that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yeah, can you go back to the slide that has the, I think it's this one, if you can tell what that is. Yeah, right there. And now I'm going to say that I'm ignorant on almost everything. But if you can help or kind of talk about if your main goal, and I'm assuming that's not the main goal, but a big goal is Hitachi, why did you pick that particular spot when there's nothing else around?
Well, two reasons. One is the antennas that are on the tower actually have a down tilt So we had to be far enough away that we weren't overshooting Hitachi. And then the other reason was, again, the landlord requested that we stay out of the middle of the field, just so when he's farming.
So if you were gonna be closer originally, how did the tilt affect that?
Well, and that's, again, why we moved north. And also, the further south we got, the lower the tower was going to have to be because of FAA. And as we moved further north, the higher it allowed us to get, just due to the keyhole of the airport. Getting up further north got us out of the keyhole, and we were able to build the tower a little taller, which then allowed us to not only serve Hitachi, but also get the highway, and then to get the Katy Trail both to the east and west.
Does the bluff shadow your signal?
I'm sorry?
Does the bluff line shadow your signal?
It actually doesn't, because at the end of the, let me use this to show you. There's actually customers down here that are going to get service from this tower.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. So the elevation of the tower, I think I saw the number is 549 feet. Do you know the elevation of the closest home on the bluff? Like, I know you have your chart there, but I couldn't see.
Actually, it's. Oh, I know. Sorry.
There's the house.
Do you mind is it all right if I get closer? I really can't see. The house is at 656 feet in elevation, and then our tower is at 449.
Thank you.
Wait, so that would be 449 at the base.
Base, correct.
So 145 feet.
Oh yeah, I'm at the top. So 449 plus 149 feet is where the top is.
Correct.
This seems to me to be progress, and it's something that's absolutely necessary. And I understand why you put the tower there. I also drove by there on the highway. You know, many times aesthetics come in on this on these board meetings. You can barely see it. Those trees are tall from the highway.
Correct.
And I would hazard a guess that you can't even see it from the highway if you're driving.
You'd have to, as you're coming south, you have to look in your rearview mirror to catch it. And going north, it would be, this much above the trees as you're looking at it.
And it's a win for the property owner. He can farm, he can do his deal, you know.
Correct.
So it makes perfect sense to me.
Mr. Barron?
Yeah, I'll point out, I think it's 549.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Thank you.
And so with the house being at 656, so 549, 550, with 150, we put it at about 700 elevation rounding.
Okay, so the top of the
Versus-
tower is.
So the top of the tower would be above the house by 40 feet or so.
Thank you, Eric. I was
Yeah, thank you. But, just 2 minutes on the state of the industry right now. Everyone hears about 5G now. And the trick with 5G is, it used to be supporting your phone in your car driving to the shopping mall. Or even before that, when I first started in 1999, I built 3 different carriers networks in the state of Missouri. There was no. And we were hitting the highways so that the doctors and lawyers can use their bag phones in their car. That's how long I've been doing this. Now I'm guessing everyone in here has a phone in their pocket.
I get it.
If they have teenagers like I do, those kids are on their phones constantly. I rue the day I bought them phones. But what's happening now, and I hate to harken back to dark days, but when COVID happened, there were areas in the entire country where networks were just overwhelmed, where people who were answering phones or occasionally checking their emails were now working at their house, and the bandwidth was just sucked up like that. So what's happening now is just imagine if you had a water pipe and you had 50 spigots on there, and everyone had their spigots that they used every now and then. Well, now everyone has their spigots wide open, and those people down at the end of the spigot are just getting drips. So we're adding a new water pipe, and then we're adding more water pipes. And what's happening now is we're now trying to cover capacity. That tower that is up there to the north at one time probably would have covered this area if people were just on their phones. But as people are driving home and their kids are in their car and they're watching their videos, one of the most popular questions when I started this in '99 was, how far is that antenna going to reach? And that was an easy question to answer. That antenna would broadcast for 5.7 miles. Well, now the question is, how many phones, how many devices is that tower going to serve? And as more and more people use their devices, and you get more and more devices, and I live in Jefferson County, Missouri, where if there's an open piece of ground, they're putting 10 houses up. So as more and more devices get in there, that area that covers is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So now we have to get more water pipes to cover those areas that aren't covered anymore. And you're right, 100%. This is going to be a great thing for that area, because they're now going to be able to have, and not only phone service, but all these carriers are now doing fixed wireless, which this fixed wireless internet, you can get a gigabyte down over a device that connects to the cell phone network. And I know our landlord lives off that street on top of the ridge there, and he keeps begging me. He goes, "Hey, when you bring the fiber in for your tower, can you get them to run it down to my house? We can't get internet." And so that's another benefit, that there's going to be fixed wireless high-speed internet available where there wasn't before. So,
Very good.
thank you.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this request? None? Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this request? If so, please approach the podium, name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Jessica Opperman, and we are at 1212 Weatherview Drive, considered Old Summit. And my husband here as well, Eric. We are the closest, we're the red roofed house there next to the wonky property, so that is us at that location. We do have some concerns about our enjoyment of our property and our property values in the area. We do appreciate that the tower is tucked back into the bluff, into that area, not out in front of the whole bluff and obviously the other houses that are out there. And we're not, those not in my backyard type of people, but we felt with the proximity to our home that we just wanted to have our voice heard. When we looked at the county records, we did our measurements too, and came up with the same thing, that we are approximately 300 feet from the tower, and that the top, close to the top half of the tower would be visible from our home. There are deciduous trees that are there, which would obviously this time of year block quite a bit of that view for us. The rest of the year, obviously not so much. The light is a concern, again, being that close to our home. When we checked the county records, we did see that the landowners have across 54 also have farmland that is listed as them being the owners there too. There is other, obviously industrial, commercial, there's a cemetery, and but no homes that would overlook from that portion of the bluff. So I know it's not the job of the committee to do that, but we thought maybe there were some other potential better sites that would still serve. Obviously, we know we're right by Hitachi. That's a big part of that, and that comes as no surprise that they would be have their input on that and want to serve that. Or a couple questions would be, does the height have to be at that height, making it visible for our home? If it's set back in that the equipment has to be positioned such, would a lower tower at say 70 feet that would keep it below our view still serve its purpose to obviously get the coverage for Hitachi, the other businesses, the highway, and the Katy Trail. Obviously our enjoyment, we can see the front of our house is where most of the rooms are, most of the windows that overlook the bluff there. And certainly out in our front patio area too when we're outside in front of the house there as well. A couple of our friends have said, well, is it safe to be health-wise close to the cell phone tower? Our research has shown that either there isn't a lot of research or that at a certain distance that is okay. That's not really our concern for us. But when it comes to our property value, the perception of that could be an issue for our property value. And some people may certainly reconsider, and maybe we would have reconsidered purchasing the property if the cell phone tower was already there ourselves. So those are our two biggest concerns, our enjoyment of our property and our property values ultimately. We have internet, we have cell phone coverage there on the property. So there are some options for that. So for us, that getting something that considered maybe better or faster, it doesn't really, for us, outweigh the potential cost of losing some value to our property as it comes to that. So those are a couple of our main concerns. Again, we understand progress and all that. We're right there. We're not trying to block that. We're just maybe leaving something open to the possibility that even with the landowner, that there may be some better opportunities that work a little bit better for the whole neighborhood. I don't know that anybody else has mentioned any, come forward or sent in information. There are homes across the bluff on 54 that look across 54 to the Capitol that have a view coming off of there. The restaurant winery has their patio out front that looks both north up towards Whole Summit and again across 54 in the valley into the Capitol as well. So obviously if the view, if that was a concern, they would have spoken out, but that, I just mentioned that, I guess, because it's the broader neighborhood in there. So those are our biggest concerns, are just, like I said, our enjoyment of that and our property values as well.
Any questions from Ms. Opperman?
Do you get much ambient light from Hitachi?
No, we have, in front of the bluff, we do have some deciduous trees in the front there, but Hitachi is low enough that when we look and we're looking across, basically across the valley. So we're looking across, we can see obviously the Capitol, everything across on Jefferson City. So
you really don't even see Hitachi from there.
Like especially when the trees are, when the leaves are, yeah, exactly. So if we're sitting on our patio, we can see a little bit of the roof of that. But really, we don't even see we see a portion of the farm field below us, but it is the closest to the Katy Trail. So we can see the trail down there, and then we can see, if we go up to the fence line along the bluff, if we're actually walking up there, then of course we can look down and we can see.
A lot of those homes on Riviera Heights, that's their front yard.
Right.
Like Quiggs is the best example, from the view, so.
Yeah. So
when you saw the original placement of the tower in the southeastern portion of the field, is that more desirable to you than right next to your house? Because it's still
right. Yeah. Like
if the board did not grant these variances, they could go back where they don't need any variances and
Yeah, I guess we'd probably have to see where it fell. It sounds like it would be a shorter tower out in the main part of the field, which would keep if we're 100 feet above the field area, that would keep it below there. So again, we would be looking more over the top of that. I don't know. Obviously, the landowner had concerns about that too, and then it puts it in view of the other houses, where right now they're likely not gonna, I'm assuming not gonna have a view of the tower and the new location in the corner, but down into the field would put it in view of the other houses along the bluff there. So I can only assume that maybe they would have some concerns about that.
Eric, would you use your pointer to illustrate the house, their property, please?
It's got a bit of a red roof.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you very much.
The board thanks you for your input.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I'd like to recall the consultant, please. Would you please address the lady's concerns about adjusting the tower height?
Yeah, the reason why we're at 149 feet rather than 155 feet is because we can't go 155 feet. Shorter is not going to give us meet our coverage objective. We would go taller if we could.
So that was my question earlier. So how come you just don't go across the highway where that industrial area is, and then you're outside of the city of Jefferson zoning?
Can I borrow the pointer again? One of the biggest concerns about going across the highway, one, as we get down here, we actually get into the keyhole of the airport.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
over here, it's a matter of access.
keep going up. Now you're in Callaway County.
Because then we don't get our shot at Hitachi.
So I'm not trying to be argumentative, but 200 feet across the highway and you lose Hitachi.
Yes, sir. Under oath.
That's topography, and that's.
Well,
It diminishes, maybe not lose.
Yeah,
how do you get the houses on the bluff but you go across the highway and you lose Hitachi?
because we're going to be just above the tree line here, and this actually gets lower as it goes down. So we're going to be shooting down into this area.
Taken care of?
No. That's all right.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this request for any reason? State your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Eric Opperman, 1212 Weatherview Drive, Holt Summit, 65043. A few things to point out right away before I forget. We are actually the lowest house on that bluff. When you drive across on 54 going north, you look, we're here, and it keeps going way, way, way up. So they are not lower. The other people are not lower. We are the lowest. Not against technology. It's evolution. You either evolve or you die. I personally find technology a bit irritating. The telephones, the people driving. I won't even go into that. But so anyhow, one of the other things is I have ridden the Katy Trail for 10 years, every other day, until the people and their poor trail etiquette drove me off of it. Another thing we won't get into. That there is a trailhead, and anyone who knows the Katy Trail knows that it gets packed, even on the off days, and even in bad weather in the winter. When I rode, it was snow on the ground. It was still really busy. The diehards are out there. Since we have bought that house on April 26, not a day has gone by that there are not several cars, if not many there, parking up on the access road to get to that little parking spot. I don't know how often they have to access their equipment. This is America. You can put up no parking signs. I guarantee nobody's going to read it, and there's going to be cars parked there. If you go to the main terminal, which used to be the old train station, you would be amazed at some of the, I've seen cops out there giving tickets, DNR wardens, almost every day. So that could be something they can consider. The other thing too, when we first, that is gonna be, well, it is our dream home, retirement home. I got 5 more years and I'm done with the rat race. I don't know if we would have bought it if we knew that that was going up. It is going to be above the trees, and there are a lot of trees. That's one of the things that drew us to it. But 6 months out of the year, when we first started looking at that house, there were no leaves on the trees. You would be amazed at how far you can see through those trees. I know quite a few pilots. We do have planes come over the house. It's not their landing pattern, but it is where they come from. I'm not a pilot. If I was one, and I think it'll probably just be a little bit of time before maybe something a little scary happens, they'd want a light on that tower. I am a fan of Seinfeld. The older I get, there is not a day that goes by that something doesn't relate to Seinfeld, and I think if you put lights on it, it's gonna be the Kenny Rogers roaster. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can Google it. It would be the Red Menace, whoa, into our house, and I don't wanna wear sunglasses at night. That being said, it is what it is. But those are basically my concerns. We appreciate the landowner tucking it out of the way. I think if he was going to put it in front of the houses, there'd be a lot more people here than us complaining about it. Although, like Jesse said, it's amazing we're right at the cliff. But the cliff, everything is so much lower than us, it blocks out a lot of it. We can barely see the roof of Hitachi unless we walk 15 feet to the fence and look down. So we appreciate them putting it where they're thinking about putting it, but we do have some definite valid concerns with it. And the other thing, we get great internet right now up there, so it is what it is, but that's all I've got to add.
Any questions for Mr. Opperman? No, thanks, sir.
All right, you're welcome.
Staff?
Was there any other public hearing? Close the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, we'll close the public hearing now.
I'll go over a few items. First, I'd referenced that there's a lot of state and federal laws that pertain to cell towers. There's a few items I'll point out just to try to make sure it's clear that what the board can or cannot consider in some of this. First is you cannot evaluate an application based on availability at other potential locations. So I tell you that you need to look at this application for the site that is not what else is available in the area. Okay. Also, with respect to trying to evaluate an application based on the company's business decisions. I mean, they've been very upfront of what their target is. But I don't believe it's in your purview to accept or reject an application based on how you feel about that particular business decision. And then another one, it was mentioned, with respect to the environmental effects of radio waves. You cannot evaluate an application based on what you think that might those effects might be, and so that's that type of consideration is basically held by the FCC. So just a few things to point out there. And so with respect to the city's zoning code, there are findings for conditional use permits and specifically for telecommunication facilities. And so an overview of those findings is contained within the staff report. We've tried to add some staff commentary to each one of those findings, and whether or not, at the staff level at least, we believe that finding is met or not, and would present that to the board for your own determinations. With respect to the variances, we've added a little bit, or the variance. Again, there are findings that are really applicable to all variances, and so we've added some commentary on those. We do not attach recommendations to variance findings, though. Leave that ultimately up to determination. Again, reference, we did coordinate with, or discuss with the airport manager and the Department of Public Works to see any concerns that they may have. So that was where the specific concern about lighting the tower. And it's really a request for voluntary lighting, and they've already stated that they'd be amenable to that with a type of light that they've looked at that would apparently meet our specific concern of making sure that whatever lighting it is, that it's what would be recommended by the FAA in a similar situation. I believe it was referenced as a steady state rather than blinking medium intensity red light. So there are other structures, of course, in the vicinity, in the river bottom, so to speak, which is very wide, that are lighted, that stick up out of the ground. A few examples include the Missouri River Bridge. It's a very tall structure, has lights on it. But also recently there was some variances granted for some cement silos located at the sand plant adjacent to the river. Again, with lights on the top of those. As mentioned, there is it is located within the regulated floodplain. That's not necessarily an issue. We just want to make sure it's clear that a floodplain permit would be necessary, and the equipment would need to be installed in accordance with floodplain regulations. Based on a preliminary review of their application materials, I did coordinate with the floodplain manager. We didn't see any particular issues there. It's just a matter of documenting that floodplain permit. There was a reference in speaking with the airport manager that they likely would need a temporary FAA clearance for a distance above 150 feet, depending on how such a tower is going to be constructed. Again, that would be a normal thing that they would be responsible for. And if you have a tower, or if you have a crane to install a tower, then you'll probably be higher than that 150 feet. But just to reference that they would, if necessary, they would need to obtain that. So with respect to staff recommendation, we do typically provide recommendations on conditional use permits. We do not on variance requests. So just to make sure it's clear to the board that we're kind of separated those two things. The variance request is a fairly minor, and of reference to that, it's from a highway. I believe a consultant responded to some of those concerns if the proximity to the highway is an issue or not. But for the conditional use permit, we would do have a recommendation for approval. Again, we've looked at the standards associated for a telecommunication tower. They appear to meet all of those standards. The compound location is screened to an extent from the adjacent areas where people would be able to view it by an existing tree line. And they do have their FAA clearance and with respect to the height of the tower. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions, Mr. Barron? Okay, we need to separate these two. Is that what you're telling me?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. We'll do it all as one then.
Yeah, so I'll go to the form of motion slide. And so with respect to the form of motion, again, the board can separate them if it feels necessary. Otherwise, it certainly pass them together. And so it's motion for approval of both the conditional use permit for the tower with the following conditions. The tower must be lighted and compliance with floodplain regulations, and just making sure that you're not circumventing. And then also the 7 feet variance from the required setback of 95 feet to permit that property line setback.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion, please?
I'll move to make a motion, and just for this explanation, our motions need to be in the form of a positive as presented. So a motion to approve the following: a conditional use permit for 145-foot tall monopole style cellular tower with the following conditions. The tower must be lighted, it must be in compliance with floodplain regulations, and also a 7-foot variance from the required setback of 95 foot to permit a property line setback for the tower of 88 feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
And I didn't see the case, this is case number B2400.
Discussion.
You go, well, it doesn't matter. I really appreciate the applicants coming in and voicing their concerns. In looking at the information as presented, it appears to me that the tower is to the northwest of their residence and not in the immediate view shed of the home. Off to the northwest, it would be visible during the winter months. It's also my experience with the lighting that's going to be constantly on is that it projects upward and outward, not down. So I'm hopeful that that will be a minimal impact, if any impact, on their residents.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Ms. Tiffany.
Crabtree,
Yes.
Seaver.
Aye.
Hake,
Yes.
Lacy,
No.
and Michael.
Yes.
4-1, yes.
4-1. The vote is 4-1, 4 in favor, 1 against. Motion carries. Thank you all for your time. We appreciate you coming in. If you have any questions, please see staff. Okay, any other business this morning?
I'd like to give staff updates. I don't have a whole lot.
Next month.
Next month, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
We do.
There is one case, or one application that has been submitted so far, so.
I'm sorry.
There's been one application submitted so far, so we will.
What date is that? Because I'm going to be out of town during that time. I don't have my phone with me.
The 9th of July.
Oh, good. I'll be here. I mean, I hope to be here. Better say that right.
Okay, if there's,
I will point out, we have, on the Planning and Zoning Commission side of our workload, we are engaging in some discussions surrounding potential zoning code amendments. We're kind of looking toward 2 different plans or studies that are fairly recent. One of them, the comprehensive plan, and then the other one, a recent housing study done by a private consultant, for the city. And those both have recommendations, not necessarily for specific zoning code amendments, but to look at, to review certain things with respect to the zoning code. particular, as it applies to residential type uses, be it housing or construction of homes. And so we're working to try to discuss some of those potential zoning code amendments at the Planning and Zoning Commission level. And so, sometimes we also look at variances that have been granted in the past. Sometimes for a community of our size, we have to look fairly deep into the past in order to get enough cases to really have enough information. And so that's one component of what we'd be looking at. So just let you know that we do have a work session scheduled with them at their normal meeting time on Thursday, and later this week. But just mention it to you that there could be zoning code amendments, in the future. That's a regular thing we do with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've been a little stretched in terms of time over the past several years, but we do regularly bring amendments to the zoning code in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration in an effort to keep our development codes fresh.
Very good, thank you.
I need to go.
Nothing further. This meeting is now adjourned. Appreciate everybody working this morning, especially thank the AV people for their input and help on these things. So, see you all.